In the Middle East, the current tensions are rooted in a tussle between Iran and America's allies, Israel and some of the Gulf states. Iran, being a relatively weak power, has used asymmetrical means through a series of militias allied with it.
The latest information we're getting, coming from the Israeli media Yediot Aharonot, is that 102 missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel.
Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. The CNN journalist FareeD Zackaria, in his weekly program on Sunday on CNN Studios, talk about or actually call the country of Iran weak. Sometimes I wonder what's wrong with some of these commentators. Calling Iran a weak nation, it sends the wrong message to the global partners and the countries that are currently interacting with the country of Iran. How can you possibly call the country of Iran as weak? I think his choice of words is the reason why the message is always being changed in terms of the narrative. It's absolutely wrong to sit in Washington and call a country that is well armed and actually able to cause devastation and damages in the Middle East and including to Israel by just sitting in Washington studios in the cozy environment and calling Iran a weak nation. I wonder what are the categories being used to describe Iran as a weak country. This country is not weak. This is a nation that is very close in acquiring a nuclear weapon. And according to some experts, it's about a political decision for the country of Iran to secure a nuclear weapon. And a journalist sit in Washington and simply just water it down and call the country weak. We all saw what actually happened. And Iran is not just a country that can be pushed around. I think this narrative is really wrong. I think there is a problem with in terms of the communications with some of these major mainstream media. They go ahead and send the wrong signal. And then other countries or geopolitical analysts around the world picks it up and then continue to say that this nation is weak. You can't just call a country that's very close to acquiring nuclear weapon to be a weak country. This is absolutely wrong. Let's take a listen to what FareeD said, and we will come back to it.
Here's my take. As tensions spiral in the Middle East, keep in mind that this is only one of 3 arenas in the world where regional or global players are trying to upend the international order. In Europe, a war continues to rage, and in Asia, a dangerous new dynamic is at work. Taken together, they define the most dangerous period internationally since the end of the Cold War. In the Middle East, the current tensions are rooted in a tussle between Iran and America's allies, Israel and some of the Gulf states. Iran, being a relatively weak power, has used asymmetrical means through a series of militias allied with it. Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, and groups in Iraq and Syria it has supported and supplied for years. Even before Hamas's attack last October 7th, these groups had kept up a steady stream of small-bore attacks on Israel and on occasion the Gulf monarchies. The effect of this pressure has been real, keeping Israel and the Gulf Arabs on guard and the region on edge. Since October 7th, tensions have made normal commerce much harder. About 70% of vessel traffic has been diverted from the Red Sea region as of June. Many airlines have stopped flying to Israel for the time being. Emirates, the Dubai-based airline, has recently canceled some flights to Iran and Iraq. Another Houthi attack on Saudi oil facilities would send oil prices skyrocketing.
From FareeD's own description, you can feel that Iran is not a weak country, it's not a country that can be ignored. The country is very close. It has demonstrated its capabilities on what it can do, that it's capable of causing harm to a number of countries in the region. And by just labeling that Iran is weak, I think FareeD is sending the wrong signal, the wrong communication, choosing the wrong way to describe a country that a number of countries around the world are very concerned that very soon Iran will become a nuclear power. Some say that they might have already acquired the nuclear bomb already, but these are basically media reports. But to sit in Washington in your comfortable studio and call a country that is so close in even making an announcement that they have obtain a nuclear bomb and calling them weak. I think that's really foolish in my way of looking at it, to be honest. This is the problem with some of these commentators in the mainstream media. They just talk really down to some nations, and they have no clue themselves. I don't think they have ever been in a war zone. They have experienced a 150-pound bomb dropping in a particular community. They sit in Washington and talk about things which, once this war is being dragged into, there will be food prices going up, fuel prices, and supermarkets will start scrambling. And there are continents and countries around the world that will feel the impact than others. This wrong conversation that these experts sit on TV and talk really down on countries is absolutely wrong. It should be called out. If it is in particular television station talking about that, it will be pulled out of air. And to sit in Washington and call Iran a weak nation, a country that basically recently demonstrated its capabilities by attacking the country of Israel, proving that they do have the technology, and you sit in Washington and you just water it down like it's a weak nation. Let's listen to what Al Jazeera had to say when Iran actually demonstrated the capability it could have in actually causing harm to regional powers which are also allies of the United States of America. Let's play the clip.
We have to exercise extreme caution. These flashes may well be interceptions. Interceptions of these projectiles. 1, 2, possibly 3 of them may or may not have hit their targets. May or may not have hit their targets in Tel Aviv. For an hour now, I beg your pardon, for a year now, we have been asking whether or not this could tilt into something even bigger than it has been. In other words, a direct, full-blown war. Oh, that's a direct hit. That is a direct hit on Tel Aviv. The flashes in the sky are likely to be interceptions of Iranian missiles, but we did see one that appeared to land in Tel Aviv. So again, to that question that we've been asking for a year, so many of our analysts and commentators saying the situation between Israel and Gaza and then between Israel and Hezbollah carries with it a very big risk of a major regional confrontation, the major actors of which would be Israel, Iran, and potentially then the United States. And we may be seeing a further salvo in this confrontation. The latest information we're getting, coming from the Israeli media Yediot Aharonot, is that 102 missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel.
Now, this is the problem. We always think that when we sit in these cozy studios in Washington and in other capitals, we can just basically talk down on a number of countries around the world. I think FareeD himself have no clue to the extent of where the Iran nuclear program is at the moment. I think by him saying these words like it's a weak nation, they can't do anything, and basically he's beating the drum of war. These journalists, sometimes they sit there as experts. A lot of people look up to them thinking that they know what they are talking about. But I think they have demonstrated over and over that they know nothing about war. They know nothing about the geopolitical events and issues happening. They've never been to some of those particular communities that bombs are raining down on people. They want that the world should go into chaos. That's the word they are using. And this kind of communication in the studio, talking about or talking down to a country that is so close, a country that can decide at any time to cause havoc to not just geopolitical allies in the region. Iran is an ally of Russia, and Iran does have other countries that they work with, China and a number of other countries around the world. And you sit in Washington, you just call them a weak nation. This have to stop. I think these are things which go ahead to if it was basically a YouTube channel that was talking about this, calling Iran a weak nation or calling another geopolitical partner a weak country, you will be censored and you will say, oh, you're fanning the flames of another nation. But to sit there and keep talking about this really negative aspect, there is a war going on in Europe at the moment. There are other issues in the Indo-Pacific, in the Southern China Sea. A lot of issues happening. And you sit in Washington and really talk rubbish about a country that can really is capable of causing harm to another nation. Iran has a lot of missiles that it can actually destroy a lot of U.S. positions in the different parts across the region. And to sit in Washington and just call this country weak, you are sending the wrong signal to different geopolitical partners around the world, especially in Europe. And you are basically telling those who do not have the intelligence that things are basically normal. It's not normal. You were not in Israel when these bombs were dropping down. You were not in Palestine when bombs were dropping down. And the chaos in the Middle East, instead of someone like FareeD to sit there and talk about how peace and other issues can come up with a resolution on processes to solve this problem. He sits in the US and talk about, oh, this country is weak. Who told you it's weak? That's the reason why we found ourselves where we are today. The same thing we're talking about Afghanistan is weak. The Taliban came and look at the havoc that they have caused in Afghanistan. We sit in this cozy environment and spill out false information. And because we have this platform. So it's absolutely wrong on what FareeD was saying, calling Iran a weak nation. I think recently, during the Trump administration, Donald Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal. For those of you who don't know, you can Google it and read about what exactly that is. That particular decision by the US president allowed Iran to kind of move really fast in terms of its nuclear program. No one can actually tell at what stage Iran is at the moment. So to sit in Washington and just call Iran a weak nation is actually a weak argument. And it's a very narrow perspective on global politics. It is important for some of these experts, before they sit in studio, they have to understand what's going on the ground, that the words that they use have a lot of impact. But I think calling Iran a weak nation is absolutely wrong. The country has demonstrated that it's able to harm other countries around the region, and to sit in Washington and fan this flame of war and beating the drums of war. It will not only affect other nations around the world, specifically in the continent of Africa, where food prices will go ahead, petroleum prices, transportation will increase, the cost of living will grow up, and you will sit in Washington and you will later on start blaming this government in Africa that they cannot manage their countries pretty well, of which you guys are sitting in Washington and actually causing a lot of chaos around the world. This is absolutely wrong. We all saw what happened in Ukraine and Russia, how grain prices went ahead. I'm not going to dive into that as a video for another day. But to sit in Washington and start addressing a country that is so close to obtaining nuclear weapons and calling them a weak nation, I think that is really disgraceful from the side of FareeD Zackaria. I just wanted to address this particular issue because a number of these mainstream journalists, they sit there in those large studios and spill out nonsense, talking about calling other countries. They are pushing for war. They just want to have war in the Middle East so they can destabilize the environment and also cause a lot of chaos. The problem between Israel and Palestine, a number of countries have come out clear that it's a two-state solution. This is never going to be resolved. The problem will continue, and people are dying in Palestine on a daily basis, and we sit in the United Nations and do nothing, and we just talk politics and go home. And now it's crossed to Lebanon, and people died in Israel as well, over 1,000, and over 40,000 people are dead in Palestine, and they will continue to die. And you sit there and you call another country that is weak, a country that is capable to punish another nations. So I think going back to FareeD Zackaria's comment is totally disgraceful and it's uncalled for. Let's continue to call some of these experts who themselves are taking the narrative of different administrations, and they want to talk about, to lecture the world on things which they have no clue about. It's absolutely wrong. We've given them the huge pass over the years, and they have that platform to talk about rubbish on air. It's absolutely not correct. This only solution to this is peace. I want to thank you for watching. Let us know what you think with regards to what FareeD Zackaria said with regards to his own perspective, with regards to Iran and the capabilities that the country may have, and what harm that country is capable of causing by FareeD calling Iran a weak nation. Is that the way to go? Is that how the particular rhetoric that we should be hearing from a channel like CNN? Such words are things that fall in the ears of those different partners in the Middle East, doesn't really sit well. Thank you for watching. We're looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.